All right, today we're diving into something, well, something really different. It's a piece of writing called Abyssal Echoes, but we're not just going to look at the plot. Nope. We're going to be literary detectives. We're going to use the words on the page as clues to figure out who is the person behind all this.
So, right out of the gate, the text just hits you with this heavy, philosophical question. And it comes from a skeleton, of all things, who's just hanging out underwater thinking about the meaning of it all. It's pretty bleak, yeah, but it's also thoughtful, and it immediately lets you know you're in for a weird ride.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Who comes up with this stuff? A world where skeletons get existential, toasters talk, and monsters have deep thoughts? What can we learn about someone's mind by exploring the world they created? That's the mystery we're cracking today.
Okay, so to get inside the artist's head, we first have to understand their canvas. And this canvas is strange, to say the least. The world of Abyssal Echoes is this physically impossible underwater place that's called a limbo or an abyss. Basically, the normal rules, they just don't apply here. I mean, just look at this. Everyone can breathe, no big deal. The bubbles are sometimes square. You've got a snowman, a toaster, and a phoenix all existing in the same space. Physics is more of a gentle suggestion here. This isn't just your standard fantasy world, it's a place literally built on contradictions. And here's the thing, even the characters know their world is nuts. This raptor's basically saying, this is absurd, and I feel ridiculous even talking about it. So the weirdness isn't just for show. The author is making the characters aware of how bizarre everything is. And that's our first huge clue.
Okay, so we've got our bizarre stage. Now let's look at the actors. You see, each character's little speech isn't really about moving a story forward. It's more like a direct phone line into the author's brain, their thoughts, their questions, their private jokes. These are our clues. So our first big clue is this recurring obsession with reality itself. Over and over, the characters question if their world is real, or a dream, or a metaphor, or something else. The author is clearly fascinated by that blurry line between what's real and what we just think is real.
And here it is, the smoking gun for that clue. A robot swordfish casually dropping simulation theory. This isn't just a fantasy creature. It's a vessel for the author to explore some very real, very modern anxieties about whether our own world is authentic. Now, the second clue goes even deeper. The author isn't just asking, is this real? They're asking, is being real even worth it? This whole text is just packed with these deep dives into suffering, purpose, and whether life is worth the fight.
Now, what's so important here is that the author isn't telling us what to think. They're staging a debate. On one side, you've got this pure animal drive to live no matter how bad it gets. And on the other, you have the argument that ending it all is the only way to stop the pain. The author is clearly wrestling with this exact conflict.
But you know, this whole thing isn't just a grim philosophical paper. And that brings us to clue number 3. This author has a very sharp, very dark sense of humor. They use all this absurdity to find comedy in some pretty dark places.
I mean, come on, a talking toaster, sitting in what looks like an ocean, calmly applying logic to its completely impossible situation, that's brilliant. It's taking a ridiculous idea and following it to its very logical and hilarious conclusion. That's the author's wit, right there.
All right, our final clue is all about how the author loves to mess with our expectations. They take these characters we all recognize, these classic archetypes, and they turn them completely inside out. Monsters aren't just monsters here, they're ideas.
This quote is just perfect. The monster knows what it thinks it's going to do, it knows it's supposed to be scary, but instead of just being a monster, it wants to have a conversation about fear itself. The author is way more interested in the idea of the monster than the monster itself. Okay, we've gathered our clues, we've explored the world, we've listened to the characters, we've seen the patterns. Now it's time to put it all together and actually sketch a portrait of the mind behind all this.
So when you put it all together, a pretty clear picture starts to form. Our author is deeply philosophical, constantly wrestling with those huge life and death questions. They're grappling with absurdism, finding both the horror and the humor in it all. They've got a dark, clever wit, they're fascinated by what it means to be conscious, and they seem to see reality itself as something shaky and unstable.
And that word, absurdism, is so important. It's the key that unlocks this whole thing. It's that feeling of looking for meaning, needing meaning, in a universe that doesn't seem to have any to give you. All of these characters live in the tension of that conflict.
And really, that seems to be the point. Abyssal Echoes isn't a story in the way we usually think of one. It's more like a laboratory. It's a safe place where the author can throw a toaster, a demogorgon, and a skeleton together and just let them talk. They're testing out ideas about reality, philosophy, and life itself.
So, what do we take away from all this? Why does figuring out this author even matter? Well, because it tells us something fundamental about creating anything, and in a way it connects right back to all of us.
You see, every piece of art, every story, anything anyone makes is just an echo from their own personal abyss. It's a reflection of their fears, their questions, their humor, their own deep thoughts. By listening to these echoes, we didn't just understand a story, we got a glimpse of the mind that dreamed it up.
And that leaves us with one last question to think about. Whether you're a writer, an artist, or you're just living your life, you are leaving echoes out in the world. So if someone were to analyze them, like we just did, what would they find? What echoes are you leaving behind?